can a person who's not a little person give birth to a little person?
Yes.
And vice versa?
Yes.
Isn't that fascinating?
I learned that.
Right? Bodies are
That is so fascinating that you can be like not a little person, but then your child can be.
But the thing is, with dwarfism too, it's mostly the torso. That's just this. It's just the arms and the legs that are shortened in birth. So the torso is actually the same as a regular person's torso.
Is it?
Yes, it is. And so that's where the misconception is. It's just the limbs that are shorter or longer.
No. I mean, like
Yes.
a male will have like a 40 chest or 42 chest.
Yes.
Yeah.
Google it.
That's part of the
Wow.
reason why they struggle with clothing and stuff like that.
Yes.
Is because their torsos are the same
Same
as
size.
the
But
their arms and
male,
legs
but
are
their
smaller.
arms and legs and
People,
their
big
heads
world.
are different sizes.
Watch that show.
Huh.
It's phenomenal.
Sure
That
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The
that was
Rollins taught me a lot.
Little people, big
Then
world.
Then you shouldn't be using the midget word.
There
Well,
was a
I was
couple
using it
others.
back then, so it's an older show. So
Yeah, there's a couple of them now that are really interesting. There's one where the wife is a doctor. Like she's
that's
like,
wild. Like
yeah. But like it goes through her life, his life, the kids.
And they have kids?
Yeah.
And their
So
kids are also little or no?
They weren't able to, yes. So they weren't able to have biological children because of the way her body is formed. And so they chose to adopt from Asian countries. I don't know which ones specifically, but they also chose to adopt little people.
Whoa.
Because they were like, no, we want to give those children a chance at a normal life or
Yeah.
some semblance of normal. So like, yeah, give them here. We will love them the
That's really
same.
cool.
Yeah, it's super
Is this
neat.
show on now?
I believe it went off air a couple years ago. I wish I remembered the name of
it's
it.
probably on TLC somewhere.
Oh, it's absolutely on TLC.
Isn't there a show called Little People?
Yeah, there's Little People,
Yeah.
Big World. There's Meet the Roloffs, and there's Seven Little Johnsons.
So what were you saying? Sorry about Indigenous people. Your teacher,
Sorry.
Yeah, it's
your
totally
teacher was
real.
fascinated with them.
Yes. So she used to take us to it was where I can't remember. It's not too far out of Brampton, but they have all the long houses that they used to live in. It's
Neat.
near like the McMichael Art Gallery. But it was an amazing experience. But we got to actually learn like some of the dark parts of the history because it's obviously everything's not always good. And one of the disturbing things I read was when the kids would try to talk to each other in their native tongues, one of the common practices was for teachers to grab the tongue and stab it with a pen.
What?
Yeah, that was disturbing AF to learn. Very disturbing.
That's fun.
It was,
So, you know, I want to do a podcast in the future on what's it called? CAS, Children's Aid Society.
yeah.
Right? We talked about that before, right? So we actually did a 3-part series in She Magazine on this. This was, I think, like 10 years ago or 8 years ago, where there was it was in the news where they had these girls that were pulled from their homes. They were both of them were like 15 years old, and they were put into foster homes like 3,000 miles away from their family. One of them hung herself, and the other one got caught in the sex trade and died of an overdose. And that opened up an investigation, and CAS just kind of just apologized, and that was it. So they have so much power, you know, this fucking organization. They're privately owned, and they make money based on the amount of children that get put into foster care. So every child that gets pulled away from a family, that CAS office that's independently and privately owned, it's not like it's not a public thing. So I can, you know, open one up and get a certification. And now if there's any domestic violence call that goes in, the police will automatically contact the local district CAS office. It'll be me or one of my officers will go there, and that family has to allow me to come in to talk to the children. If they say no, the police will force themselves in with that person. That counselor now will talk to the children. And there's a documentary called More Powerful Than God that was done about this. And these fucking people, it's almost like they coach the child. Like they'll say, oh, you know, when I grew up, my dad used to lose his anger all the time and yell and swear and throw things. And it's okay. Like, you know, I dealt with it. It wasn't that bad. Does your dad ever done that?
Yeah.
To almost like to humanize in a way. So the child's like, yeah, you know, my dad has yelled. Oh, yeah. Has he ever like, you know, really yelled really hard? You know, sometimes when I was younger, I'd go hide under my bed. So like, where do you go when your father gets really angry? And the kids like, oh, I go into my room, I put my headphones on, I play my game. So now they're kind of making they're taking something that might have been a very tiny thing, blowing it up, write that in their fucking notes. Then if they, if there's another call that comes in or whatever, or they get their supervisor says, yeah, you've got the green light, go and remove those fucking kids. Those kids now will go into a foster home. Every child that's put into a foster home, the CAS office gets an X amount of money per month. That money, they pay X amount of that to the foster home. So most of these foster homes are run like shit, like utter fucking garbage, where the food is shit, the clothing is shit, the bedrooms are fucking cramped, the kids are getting beat up, raped, abused, and all that stuff. And all this person cares about, who runs a foster home, is getting as many kids into the house as possible because they got to check every month, right? But what they were doing with the Indigenous children was way worse, where they would pull them away and place them in some fucking house, like in 2 provinces away from the family.
Yep.
Now imagine how depressed that first of all, that child most likely shouldn't have been pulled away. It was on false pretenses. And now that kid is super depressed. They're completely out of their environment, right? So before, they lived in a society that had all Indigenous people and their culture and their morals and their values and traditions, all of that. Now they're put in some fucking foster home in a different province. They're not, they have no way of contacting their family.
And they're also forced to learn a religion that they don't know, because it was like
oh, that's what happened then. Yeah. Elementary schools. Yeah. No, that was a given. In the elementary schools, they were forced to follow Catholicism.
Yeah.
So it was the Catholic Church that was behind all of this, right? So they still have missionaries in Africa and different parts of Asia that just go around preaching this fucking Bible thumping bullshit. I have nothing against Christianity or any religion, Judaism or Islam or Hinduism. I respect all of them. But the minute you start forcing it down someone's throat, that we will only feed you and clothe you if you acknowledge that our God is your God.
Which is wild, especially when you take into account, like, imagine going from a monotheistic religion or monotheistic or a multi-theistic like thought process of like there being multiple gods, and being told, no, not only are you wrong, but there's only one, and they're like all powerful, all knowing, and omniscient. And you're like, what?
And not only that, it's my God too. It's my God.
Yeah.
My God is the one that's right. Yours is completely wrong. Your parents are fucked in the head. Your grandparents are fucked in the head. Your whole family's fucked in the head.
Yeah.
And I'm going to save your soul.
Yeah. And you're like, but there's other things that my soul does.
Yeah. And who the fuck are you to save my soul? Like,
what
who
if
are
it
you?
doesn't want to be saved?
Well, who are you to even decide that? Maybe your soul needs saving. Like, who are you to peddle that onto me?
Yeah.
Right. So that's why I really hate when people who follow certain religions, whether it's Judaism, Islam, or Christianity, the main ones, right? That they have this, and again, this is
largely
not
monotheistic ones.
Yeah, and it's not even the religion itself that has this doctrine. It's the people who preach it, where they believe they're the chosen ones.
Yeah, the ones that have like radicalized it.
Yeah, they're like, we're the only ones who are going to go to heaven because I was baptized, or because I'm Jewish. So it's like, what? So I remember when I had my little girl, she was only like about 3 months old. I had a friend of mine who followed one of these religions. And I was like, so let me ask you a question. My little girl, who's 3 months, God forbid something happened to her and she passed away. You're fucking telling me that she's going to burn in hell?
Yep.
Because she doesn't follow your religion? He's like, yeah. And I said, well, fuck you and fuck your God.
Right?
Because that's not God.
Because your baby girl hasn't been baptized.
Yeah.
She hasn't been removed from the original sin that she had no part in, because the original sin is sex. But then like also,
but that's not even a sin.
Right? Like, how do you expect the earth to repopulate and to populate in general if what you are doing is then a sin? And then they were like, oh, oops, I guess we have to like find a way to make sure that you are okay with this and like you go to heaven. So baptism. And you're like,
is this Catholicism?
Yes.
That
Yeah.
sex is a sin?
Yes.
What?
So different sects, or like different areas of Catholicism, or different
like Orthodox, you mean? Or the different,
like Orthodox,
like Greek Orthodox? Or
yeah. But like the general consensus is sex is bad unless it is between a man and a woman during marriage. But even then,
it's still a sin.
It is still a sin.
So the child is born out of sin, and
the child is
baptized
always
will
born
purify
out of
him.
sin, and baptism will purify them, at least to the best of my knowledge. And like, I went to a Catholic school.
I
for
kind of
that.
heard that as well too, and I kind of thought it was just really the
It's wild. And then you go through, so it's baptism, then confirmation? No, there's one more. Communion. So
Okay.
there's baptism, then there's communion, where you're like brought into the church and allowed to have the body of Christ and blah, 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 blah,
and
blah.
the blood of Christ.
Yeah, so you're allowed to like take the Eucharist at that point because you're seen as like a child of God or like
What's the
becoming.
Eucharist? Sorry.
It's the
the chip.
chip. Yeah, it's the
Okay.
cracker. And so you like go in and you're allowed to take the Eucharist now. And that's at, if I'm remembering correctly, like grade 3, I think.
So did you go to Catholic school?
Yeah, I went to both elementary and high school.
So when you were like in grade 3 and you had your friends as well too, didn't it kind of the wording of it that you're eating the body of Christ?
Yeah, it's
didn't that
weird.
kind of affect you in a way like what the fuck?
I mean,
Or
like,
no?
so because you're kind of indoctrinated with it, and like, I'm aware that indoctrinating has a negative connotation, but because you're constantly surrounded with it, it doesn't
Normalizes
seem as
it.
weird. Yeah, it normalizes it. It destigmatizes it. It wasn't like, for me, the idea of like, I've never been one of the people that was like, oh my God, the Eucharist is absolutely the body of Christ. And when I drink the wine, I am taking him into my soul. It's wine and it's a unleavened cracker. Like,
And it's
right?
cheap wine.
I
Yeah.
just have a random question.
Go for it.
What about somebody who's in AA? How do they do that? I'm serious. Like, if somebody wanted to
so-
follow the religion and go up and take the body of Christ,
You are
but-
allowed to say no, thank you. So
okay.
what you do is if you go up to receive the body and blood of Christ, and you're not able to, like, so prior to your first communion, or if you're unable to drink the wine or whatever for some reason, you put your hands over your chest and the priest will bless you.
Okay.
You receive a blessing instead.